Hello everyone. Welcome to our second webinar. And last time we got a good response. So today our topic is internal financial controls, also known as IFC. And our speaker for today is Mr. Anurag Nahta. He has a rich experience in internal auditing, risk and compliances and internal controls, as well as IFC. He is currently working with Genpact. I think he's a manager in risk and compliance team, right? I'm right, Anurag?
Yes, correct.
So previously, he has also worked with many of Big Fours and in healthcare industry. So he has a good experience in internal financial controls. So over to you, Anurag. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. So as you all know, the topic is internal financial controls and also internal controls over financial reporting (ICFR). And I'll also discuss very briefly about proposal drafting, as it is also important. So, to summarize, just as an index, the contents today will be learning objectives, then some common pitfalls or myths regarding IFC, then the key definitions for risk, ICFR, internal control, IFC, corporate governance, etc. Then there are some key considerations for IFC or ICFR projects. That is the way that the approach that you should follow doing those projects. Then there are like the phases. I've divided the approach or the IFC in phases and how to actually do it and execute a project, then a project plan, then some kind of proposals, illustrative templates for IFC as well as for proposal drafting. So and also, like, I would like to highlight before starting that I don't claim to be an expert on this topic, and it is not necessary that whatever I have said or whatever I'll say will be 100% correct. There are different situations and different solutions to those situations. So this is just based on my knowledge and my experience so far. So just some disclaimers, the first is that this document is not an advertisement of my professional achievements. This is just for academic discussion and just for educational purposes of chartered accountants or even other professionals who want to learn something about IFC. So yeah, and this is in no way, like intended to uh, uh, get myself any work, or I have no commercial interest at all in giving this webinar, and I'm not earning anything or getting a single rupee for conducting this webinar. Then obviously this document or this 1 hour session is only like a brief or outline of the topic and does not cover all the aspects in detail because of the time constraint. Then one size does not fit all. Like as I said that there are different situations and there are different solutions. So it's not that you have to just follow this PPT blindly. In your case, you have to apply as per your case. Then this presentation is only for the purpose of the webinar and not for public circulation. I mean, from that, it does not mean that you cannot upload it on YouTube or anything. You can obviously upload on YouTube, and many of the information I have also gathered is through internet only. You can easily find on the internet also. It's just that I have compiled all the information. You can obviously use this for your educational purposes, but not that you cannot kind of copy this PPT or claim that it is your work. That's the only thing. Now some of the requests that I would like to make, that please, I would request everybody to please mute their microphone And but if in case you have any queries, you are free to put it in the chat box, and then I can take it at the end of the session. So those are like uh, before we begin, as I said, one size does not fit all. So as per the industry you are working in, you have to apply these principles. Then now coming on to the learning objectives. So the learning objectives are to simplify the concept so that whatever you have learned in the theory, it is easier to practice, and it's mainly so that it helps the chartered accountants when they are practically doing the project or assignments. Then extending our thinking, as in like do not think IFC as a compliance, but as more as a value addition. And so these are like just some of the learning objectives. Then some common pitfalls, yeah, or some of the myths or the pitfalls also, that ICFR, the number one ICFR is just for documentation compliance to the provisions of the Companies Act 2013, and to ensure that statutory auditors get the clean documentation. So some people take ICFR as just like a compliance, but this is not true. There is a lot of value that can be added, and it's not the tick in the box kind of an activity. And then some people have the myth that IFC and ICFR are one and the same thing, and both come in with the Companies Act 2013 only. Yeah, I mean both are mentioned in the Companies Act 2013, but both there is slight difference between IFC and ICFR, and the applicability and the definition also. Then some companies adopt the approach of suit the budget for documentation rather than solve the internal control problems. So this is again, some companies which want to save some money and just do a compliance tick mark because it is required as per the Companies Act, and not try to rather solve the basic internal control problems, or like improve the process, as we say. Then ICFR reviewed multiple times without any tangible results improvement coming out of ICFR. So yeah, this is also one of the myths, that ICFR is first reviewed by internal auditors, then client and external consultant, then the stat auditors, and management. Many stakeholders are involved, but there is not too much value addition. It's a time wastage kind of an activity. So this is also one kind of a myth. Not prioritizing testing of controls for separate business units factories within one legal entity. So yeah, as we know that testing of controls should be, if a company has multiple locations from which it functions, then testing should happen at all the different locations. Then not leveraging the risk and control metrics for multiple purposes, or creating multiple documents for same controls within the organization. So that's also one thing, that there is already an RCM or already internal audit happening. So this is kind of a duplication of work, but it's not like that. Then inadequate support or focus from top management, or and inadequate resources staffing with chief audit executives. So sometimes staffing is also a problem within the organizations. So these are the key definitions. I would start with the corporate governance. Corporate governance involves a set of relationships between a company's management, its board, its stakeholders, and other stakeholders. Corporate governance also provides the structure through which the objectives of the companies are set, and the means of attaining those objectives and monitoring performance are determined. So basically, corporate governance is, in simple words, if I say, is to uh, to ensure that the company is functioning in an ethical manner. So that's the objective of corporate governance. Like SA 260, the exact definition is not defined, I think, in the Companies Act, but there are some references which I've put in that, like SA 260, communication with those charged with governance, and auditors are required to communicate audit matters of governance interest to those charged with governance, like this. So yeah. So if I go to the next definition, then the definition comes of risk. So risk is, you can read the definition, different definitions here, and including the one from the Institute of Internal Auditors, like the uncertainty of an event occurring that could have an impact on the achievement of the objectives. Risk is measured in terms of consequence and likelihood. So, in simple words, what can go wrong is the risk. And similarly, control is how we can prevent the wrong from happening. What is the basic control which can prevent the risk? That is a control. So, risk is basically, like, the thing is, it might happen, something wrong, something might go wrong, might not go wrong, but a risk is still has to be documented. Now coming on to the definition of internal audit. So internal audit, if I say, internal auditing is an independent objective assurance and consulting activity, describing value, designed to add value and improve an organization's operations. It helps an organization accomplishes its objectives by bringing a systematic, disciplined approach to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of risk management, control, and governance process. So, as we, even like in the definition, it's given that internal audit is first, internal audit is an independent body. Like it should be independent of all the other departments and all. It should give its point of view independently. Then it's specifically given that it is designed to add value. So it's not a tick in the box. It's something that we can add value by. Then, if I look by the ICAI definition, the internal audit provides independent assurance on the effectiveness of internal controls and risk management processes to enhance governance and achieve organizational objectives. So it is, like streamlining operations to achieve to uh, reduce your cost, or to enhance your revenue, and to achieve the organizational objectives. So then we come on to the definition of control. Now, control, basically control is something which is there to prevent the risk, or to prevent any lapse from happening. Even control is of two type. Controls are of two type: preventive and detective, and I will come to that later also. When I open, when I show you one annexure, I'll come to that in detail. So, definition of control: any action taken by management, the board, and other parties to manage risk and increase the likelihood that established objectives and goals will be achieved. Management plans, organizes, and directs the performance of sufficient actions to provide reasonable assurance that objectives and goals will be achieved. So mainly it is risk mitigation, like the processes in place to mitigate the existing risk and to provide assurance to the management. So those are important definitions that we should know before going forward. Yeah. So now coming on to the definition of internal financial control. So internal financial control is defined in the Companies Act and Companies Act 2013. As we all know, it was introduced only in the Companies Act 2013 only. So internal financial control has been defined in the Companies Act section 134 subsection 5 as to mean policies and procedures adopted by the company for ensuring the orderly and efficient conduct of its business, the safeguarding of assets, the prevention and detection of frauds and errors, the accuracy and completeness of the accounting records, and the timely preparation of reliable financial information. So that means that all the controls that can affect the financial reporting, that those should be like the objective is to prevent any frauds, so that controls are in place to prevent frauds. That's the main purpose. Then we come to reporting, ICFR. So internal controls over financial reporting shall mean a process designed to provide reasonable assurance regarding the reliability of financial reporting and the preparation of financial statements for external purposes in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. A company's internal control over financial reporting includes those policies and procedures that pertain to the maintenance of records that in reasonable details accurately and fairly reflect the transactions and dispositions of the assets of the company, provide reasonable assurance that the transactions are recorded as necessary to permit preparation of financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and that receipts and expenditures of the company are being only in accordance with authorizations of management and directors of the company, and provide reasonable assurance regarding prevention or timely detection of unauthorized acquisition, use, or disposition of the company's assets that could have a material effect on the financial statements. So basically, the thing is that if you see the difference between IFC and ICFR, ICFR is more focused over financial reporting risk, the risk which are directly financial in nature. So in ICFR, we only consider the financial risk, or the risk which affect financial reporting directly. Whereas in IFC, we also consider operational risk, which can lead to financial impact. So I hope the difference is clear. There is a very small difference, but I hope that the difference is clear. So IFC also includes operational controls, which can have an impact on the financial reporting, but ICFR does not consider the operational control. It only considers financial controls. So this is again another definition of financial of ICFR, which is as per the auditing standard 5. Even COSO, in COSO, there is, I don't think there is a definition of ICFR, but there is a definition of COSO, of internal control, which is said to be internal control is a process effected by an entity's board of directors, management, and other personnel designed to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of objectives in the following categories: effectiveness and efficiency of operations, reliability of financial reporting, compliance with applicable laws and regulations. Yeah, SA 315 was first issued by ICAI in February 2018. So, in which there was, like this is just an explanation of the definition. So I'll just move on to the next slide. So just if you take a simple approach, then suppose you have this chair and I ask you what is the risk you perceive if you have to sit on this chair. So you will say that this chair might, I might fall, this chair might break, or I can have a backache, something like this. And if I give you this sofa, and if I ask you what is the risk, that you perceive if you sit on the sofa, now definitely like you are thinking bigger. So that's, now if I take another example, uh, if if you just see this slide, just see this picture, you will see many things in one go. There is like a rat trapper, and there is a rat who is trying to snatch that piece of bread, and he is wearing a helmet. So the risk is like, you can see like the risk reward challenge, and the controls in one single frame. Can you reduce the risk to zero? Well, I would say in most organizations, no. You cannot minimize the risk to zero. So that's impossible that there will not be any risk to the organization. There will always be risk, but there can be controls to mitigate those risks. Yeah. So key consider like key considerations for IFC or ICFR projects. First, understand the difference between IFC and ICFR that I've just explained. Then evaluate the legal entity and operating structures and assess the applicability accordingly. So applicability is different according to the turnover and the structure of the organization. Understand the applicable provisions, compliances, framework, guidance notes. Evaluate the specific governance, risk, and compliance requirements for IFC and ICFR. Determine the objectives of the documentation, evaluation, and extent of coverage. Evaluate management responsibilities and auditors' responsibilities and reporting requirements for IFC and ICFR. So, auditors' responsibilities is given in the Companies Act. It clearly has the responsible rules and responsibility of the auditor, which you can refer over there. Then review the existing policies, procedures, and system in place to avoid duplication of efforts and cut down on redundant documents. Plan to integrate IFC, and ICFR and internal auditors. So far as the policies, procedures, and internal audits are concerned. Work out a customized plan for assessment of IFC, ICFR, and testing of controls to ensure compliance to the applicable provisions and for discharging management and auditors' responsibilities for IFC and ICFR. Agree on the approach and methodology with the statutory auditors, and use standard templates wherever there are guidance notes. You should follow them. Then optimize the cost of compliance for internal audit and IFC. Yeah, so this is like coming on to the three different phases of how you can plan or execute an IFC project. So first phase is designing. Under designing, what you do is identify the key processes in the organization, then identify the risk in that industry or the organization, then perform design assessment. Like it's like a kind of a walkthrough of one sample to understand the risk in each process, or the design gaps in each process. Then document the risk and the controls, that is the as is controls. Then phase two is testing. So if phase one is testing one sample, that's called a test of design. So or a TOD in our language. So in which you only check or test one sample just to see if the process is working fine at a design level. So whichever processes are working fine at a design level, you then go on to the testing, and it is called test of effectiveness or TOE. what we call in our language. So testing in this, we need to test the samples as per the ICI guidelines. So so what ICI guidelines says is it depends on the frequency of the controls, that the number of samples you have to take or you have to test. So if it's as needed or a daily control, you need to test 25 controls. If it's a weekly control, you need to test 8 samples. If it's a monthly control, 3 samples. If it's a quarterly, then 2 samples. And if it's a semi-annual or annual, then 1 sample you have to test. So these are the guidelines. So once you are, once you have prepared the RCM in the designing phase 1, and you are ready with the risk and the controls, now you have to test those controls by selecting the samples as per the ICI guidelines, and then testing it. So in which you have to prepare the control testing sheets, that what all attributes that you have tested uh, in the control, and is it a pass or a fail. Then sampling and control attributes for testing. Yeah, this I've just discussed. Exception reporting templates, that is whatever controls are failed. For that you prepare an exception report. Then once you are ready with your exception report, then you discuss it with the process owners and decide on the action plan or the remediation plan. Then to ensure operating in phase 3, we want to ensure operating effectiveness of the organization, for which workshops and trainings are conducted for the process owners, to educate them about the controls in the organization, then and the importance of the controls and IFCs. Then there is something called the risk and control self-assessment. So what it basically means is that the control owners, they themselves they test the controls, and they certify if the control is a pass or a fail, or they self certify if there is some lapse in the process or the control. They self certify it, and then they rectify it, decide on a plan to rectify it themselves. Then the test of operating effectiveness of RCSA and remediation plans. So whatever remediation plans have been suggested by the auditors, this is basically kind of action plan that the control owners are doing. Then now coming on to the deliverables in each and every phase. Now in the first phase, as we know, test of design, which is called test of design testing, in which we identify the risk and document the corresponding controls. For that, we prepare risk and control metrics, process flowcharts, and design evaluation reports. So risk and control metrics, I will also show you one sample for the fixed asset process, so that you can better understand. Process flowcharts, again, these are flowcharts of the process, and most of you might be aware that how a flowchart is. Then it's a design evaluation report, which again means if there are some failed some controls which are failing at the design level. It's just a report that we submit to the management. Then if we come to the second phase, that is the testing phase, in which we select the samples and then test the controls which have passed at the first stage. Yeah, so there is one more thing that I forgot to mention. If there is a control which has failed in the test of design phase 1, then we will not be testing that control in phase 2, because at the design level only it has failed. So in the phase 2, we have the control testing sheets for each control, and then we have the exception report for all the failures. And phase 3, we have report on operating effectiveness and like a summary report for management. Yeah, so these are the stepwise approach that you need to follow while doing an IFC assignment. So first is gain understanding of the business or the industry as a whole. You know what, like for example, you are going an auditing or going and doing an IFC for a manufacturing of alcohol. So just try to understand the whole alcohol or alcohol business, or similarly in any sector. Identify the intended benefits of ICFR and applicable regulatory requirements. So you need to identify, what are the regulatory requirements that will be applicable. Then mandate. Then formalize the mandate for carrying out ICFR. So it basically means what is the core purpose for carrying out your ICFR. Then comes the project planning, making the project plan. Then you validate the plan and you talk to the various stakeholders and the management and try to agree on the plan. Then you come to understanding the org structure and identifying areas of assessment at an entity level. Then you have discussions with the process owners to understand the risk and to document the controls, review policies and procedures, and prepare a initial data request. Then, as we all know, walkthroughs and discussions which are required. Then documenting the as is controls in for the corresponding risk. So that is like almost like a risk and control metrics preparation stage. Then we identify the design level gaps and prepare that report. Then the risk and control and the testing sheets. Then the design gap analysis. Then we do the sampling and test the controls. And finally, we prepare a report to summarize the recommendations, to summarize the findings, and to share the recommendations and the action plans. So this is what I'll come to. So this is why we should look at ICFR beyond compliance. What are the benefits? It helps in standardizing policies and procedures for multi-location, multi-business companies. It helps in standardizing the policies and procedures. Then it fosters a control conscious work culture. That is, people are conscious and aware about the importance of the controls. Then it provides the assurance to the CEO and CFO that the business is performing well. It is also like it's like a base to improve the processes and procedures. It helps us to identify cost reduction opportunities and revenue enhancement opportunities, and it also helps to automate the controls. Yeah, so now coming on to the template which I was just talking about. I think I'll just open this template for you. Yeah, so this is basically I have just taken out one RCM or a risk and control metrics for the fixed asset process. So as you all know, so just I'll just first explain the rows that are there in the risk and control metrics. So serial number is okay. Then sub processes, or list down all the sub processes. Like for example, in fixed assets, it starts with acquisition, then classifying it into the type of asset, then capitalization. After that, there is depreciation of plant and machinery. Then there is disposal or sale, physical verification of assets. So these are the major sub processes that are there for the company. Then we capture the risk, as we have already been talking about, that what are the risk in the process or the sub process. For example, if we take the fixed asset acquisition, so incorrect requirement analysis or capex expenditure not in accordance with the requirements, or delay in acquisition of plant and machinery leading to inappropriate expenditure or negative impact on production. So this is mainly kind of a delay in acquisition of plant and machinery. Then you acquire the fixed asset on a higher cost because you do not ask for multiple quotations. Then there is risk of incorrect coding of assets and so on. So in the interest of time, I'll not be going in too much detail, but still I'll be explaining the basics. Then we certify, is it a fraud risk, or if this risk can cause a fraud in the organization or not. So incorrect classification, it can lead to fraud. For example, even like things like incorrectly classifying a capex expenditure as opex expenditure. Then this is a risk reference number. So this you can reference in all other documents while you are preparing your flow chart as well as the supporting document. There you can so there this reference is important. Then the risk classification. Risk classification is high, medium, and low. So any risk according to the damage it can do, it is classified into high, medium, or low risk. Then the as is control. So as is control, this obviously it is left, it is written here to be evaluated at the time of control testing. So whenever it depends on industry to industry, and there is no standardized control. So it depends on the organization for which you are doing IFC. You need to understand the as is process, by conducting a walkthrough of the process, which is also called like a test of design. And then yeah, and then you need to document it here. Then comes the control reference number. This is nothing but just a reference number of the control for the other documents. Then the attributes that need to be tested. So as I earlier said that in each control at the time of testing you have to test certain attributes. So that is what we are trying to document here. Then there are assertions. So assertions are basically completeness, accuracy, valuation, which part it is related to, or it will hit. Then also I'll be talking about, this is a design gap, or if there is any gap. Then I'll be talking in some detail about preventive and detective controls. So preventive control is something which will prevent any error from happening. So, and there is also another category is detective control. So detective control is, we can identify the error after the error has happened. In preventive, we prevent it from happening, but in detective, it's it's like a post facto kind of a thing. So just to give an example, if there are like automated system controls, regarding let's say depreciation run is in SAP is sometimes in most of the big organizations is automated. So once the asset is created, if it is created correctly, then the depreciation month by month is run correctly. So it's a preventive control. It will prevent it. But like a physical verification of assets, it will, you can identify any discrepancy only after you do a physical verification. So only after an error has happened or there is some discrepancy, then you can identify. So it is a detective control. Now there are also like two types of controls, manual and automated. There are actually three types: manual, automated, and semi-automated. So manual control, there is the preparation is completely manual. Like for example, there is some kind of an Excel sheet that is prepared, and some kind of a document which is signed and approved by some higher authority. It is called a manual control because the control is manual. The approval or the review is happening manually. Then there are controls which are automated in the system. Like for example, I said something like a depreciation run can be automated, or that can be automated. Also one thing to note here is that even if a control is a daily control, or or multiple times daily control, and and it's an automated control. So you need not take 25 samples. You only need to test one sample for the automated control as per the ICI guidelines. Because, because the system is automated, there is no chance of error. So that's the thing. So yeah, so IP is another important thing, which is the information produced by the entity. It means, in simple terms, it means nothing but the supporting documents that have been provided by the uh, process owner at the time of testing of the controls. Whatever documents you have taken, it's something like that. Then you can also put in something like an application system used. The control is in MS Excel or SAP or Oracle. What is the system? What is the software? So this is basically, like then when the testing happens, the test results, the conclusion, and all of that. So this is a very comprehensive kind of an RCM that I've tried to present for you, and also with the with the sample size also. I've tried to explain the sample size also as per the ICI guidelines. So again, I would like to say that like if it's an automated control, only one sample needs to be tested, regardless of the frequency of the uh, of the control. So that was about IFC. Now I think in the interest of time, we should be uh, taking the questions. If somebody has any questions, we can take that. I'll just stop the sharing. Yeah.
So many questions are there in chat. You can check in chat if some are relevant.
Yeah, sure. I'll just check once from the starting. I hope I was audible throughout the session.
Yes, Anurag.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Will IFC and ICFR have any overlap in scope? If we understand the overlap, things will be clear. So, see, if I say IFC includes ICFR, okay, but ICFR does not include IFC. What it means is that IFC is ICFR plus operational controls which can have a financial impact. So IFC is bigger in scope, and ICFR is comparatively smaller. Okay, what happened when any sample fails in TOD and TOE? Okay, fine. If in test of design, if there is a, if in test of design sample fails or a control fails, then that control is failed on a design level, and effectiveness, we will not test the effectiveness because it is already failed in the design level. We need to then come up with recommendations to improve the design of the control, or to in fact frame the basic control that should be there. And in TOE, if a control fails in TOE, then then there is a problem. Then there is a control in place, but the control is not effective or it is not followed. And in case that the effectiveness is failing, then you need to come up with recommendations which can which should prevent those lapses or errors from happening. Then Himani has one question: is the process audit we do an example of IFC? No, not really. Process audit is like an internal audit is different from IFC. Yeah, then Mohit has another question. Isn't it that we have worked with the process owner to understand why the exception occurred at the first place? Yes, if there is any observation, we always first we discuss with the process owner, and then only we take his views and his action plan. We try to understand, firstly we try to understand the root cause why the lapse has happened, and we try to formulate an action plan with the help of process owner only. So it's always the process owner with which we discuss the observation first, and then we prepare the report.
Thanks, Anurag.
Then there's a question: the exception report is discussed with management before issuing overall opinion under ICFR. Yes, it has to be discussed with management. First, it is discussed with the process owner. Then it is discussed with the management, senior management, and once it is finalized, it is given to the stat auditors. Okay. Then there is something question like, can you explain how to classify entity level controls and process level controls? Okay. So, entity level controls are something which is done at an entity level, like for example, something like a succession plan. It's an entity level control. Process level control is something which is at a process level. For example, in the fixed assets or on the procurement process, the risk we discussed. What is the percentage criteria for passing failing a particular control? So yeah, so this is a good question, very important question also, Namanpreet. So yes, uh, for example, if we are taking a sample, it's a daily control and a manual control, and we have taken uh, we have to take a sample size of 25 as per the ICAI guidelines. Minimum 25. We have taken a sample of 25, and if there are 24 samples are passed and one sample is failed, even then the control is failed as per the ICAI guidelines. Even if one sample is failing, the control is failing. So that's the rule, or that is what we follow. Can you please highlight on the applicability of IFC and ICFR as well? This is mandatory for us. In fact, I should have included a slide about applicability also about of the IFC, because there are, I think, listed companies which have a turnover of more than 100 crore, or which have taken a loan, secured or unsecured, of over 50 crore. All those entities should have their IFC done. That is the applicability. You can even check on Google also once. and you will find it very easily. It will not be challenged at all. So this you can just cross check once, but yeah, as per me, that is the applicability. Will it not go in remediation testing if only one sample is failing? Remediation testing, yeah, I mean, there will be, there will obviously be a root cause analysis and an action plan or a remediation plan. If even if one sample is failing, there will be a remediation plan. Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining in. So as I said that this is not like kind of a complete or very detailed thing, like the applicability. For example, I have not included, and certain things, flowchart, for example, I have not included here in the interest of time. Otherwise, it could have become very lengthy. So things like that, maybe we can take up some specific thing in IFC, and then, or maybe we can have a separate webinar on only on the risk and control metrics and flowchart and the deliverables. In that, we can take up in detail.
So we will meet again next week at 5 same time. So I am closing this meeting. Thanks for joining everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you
Anurag
so
and
much.
Ankit, once again.
Thanks.